Hello, everyone. I decided to do my exploratory presentation on Greece and Rome. I found both of these civilizations to be the most interesting out of all of the ones that we've learned in the first four modules. I also think that they made the most impact actually over time within our society today. Um, yeah. So, what makes a great civilization? So these are a couple things that I think are very important to making a great civilization. Government, a strong government is very important with designated officials. Trade amongst other countries. Um, One of the most important things is a stable food supply through agriculture. This is important because if you don't have a stable food supply, you can't have a steady growth in population, and that's going to falter and make your empire or your civilization fall. I think a religion or a common belief in a higher power unites people, keeps people honest, keeps people grounded. So I think that that is very important in a civilization, um, even if it's not exactly the same religion all amongst the people. I think religion in general oftentimes keeps people humble and gracious. Division of labor, not necessarily defined classes in a society or a civilization, but definitely an understanding of who does what to keep the society or the civilization going. Um, Common language or script. This is important. So as far as creating laws, so that way, if a law is written down, everyone understands it, and then a common language so everyone understands who's talking and what they're trying to say. If there's 50 billion languages in one civilization, how can we ever expect for anyone to understand what anyone is saying? So a common language is very important. And then culture. I definitely think culture has a big impression on civilization. So through their architecture, their paintings, their food, um, and through all the other things, which we'll actually see within Greece and in Rome, how their culture has impacted their civilizations. So compare and contrast the achievements of two of the great civilizations covered in the first four modules. So here you'll see that there is, in Greece, we have the temple, and then in Rome, we have the Colosseum. So we're going to compare Greece and Rome similarities. So both of the civilizations took tremendous pride in their art through sculptures and paintings, and also through pottery. On the left here, we have Greek pottery, and then on the right we have Roman sculptures. Um, Both also were very particular about their architecture. They did their architecture a little differently. However, architecture was just as important to them as art. Um, Both started with kings and then moved towards a democracy over time. Both were divided according to wealth. So that goes back to the division of labor, but also this was more of a class, the different classes. Both did engage in slavery. So they both had slaves and depended on them. Both were agriculture driven and both had their own coinage. So here on the right, we have a Greek coinage here, a Greek coin here. Angel! Angel! All right, with Greece. So as far as architecture, they built their temples to glorify their gods, and their sculptures to idealize their gods and goddesses. Um, their style of art was Venus de Milo. Their households were nuclear or okos, which means basically that the sun could challenge their father. So if the son did not agree with what the father's decision was, they could challenge their father in court. Greek women were not considered citizens but could own property. However, they could not sell their own property, so they could not sell or dispose of it. Geographically, they were positioned near water by the Mediterranean Sea, so this made easier trade access. And they had no structured government. They did move more towards a democratic party or democratic government after their kings, but it wasn't as structured as Rome. In Rome, we have civic buildings created to honor the empire. So this is different compared to Greece because Greece used their buildings and architecture to elevate their gods and goddesses, while Rome uplifted their empire. Sculptures were realistic humans and idealized officials. Their art was mosaic. They had pater familias, paterfamilias, which were when the father was in control or when the father was in charge. Adult sons must still comply with father's orders, as well as their daughters had to comply with their father's orders. If they were already married, they still fell into that same um, compliance. Roman women were considered citizens, which is wonderful, and could own and sell her own property. Geographically located inland, which means that it was harder for them to trade to other countries by water. They had to find their different ways of trade, which could sometimes hinder their economic system. And then also, they had a more structured and organized government than Greece. Again, they did have a democratic government, but they actually started forming more Senate. So their Senate was a representative vote for all of the citizens in Rome. In what ways do the 21st century ideas differ from the two ancient civilizations you chose? Well, today we have more structured democratic government. So in the US, we have the House of Representatives and we have the Senate. And these both work to represent the people, more representative votes. And we also have checks and balances. So no one has too much power. So it kind of terminates the corruption. No slavery is in the U.S. and in most other countries. There is still slavery in developing countries. However, it's not as prominent as it was before. And finally, and most importantly, the biggest change is women's rights. Women are considered citizens and equal to men in most countries. In this country, they are, which is wonderful. It's something that women fought a long time for. So, yeah, women's rights is awesome. So, I hope you all enjoyed my presentation. I had a blast making it. And that's all, folks.